Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for another episode of the Movie Commentary Podcast. It is the podcast in which we watch movies and we talk about them. And first off, for those of you that are diehard listeners, I know that there are probably about, maybe 6 of you. This episode is coming out a little bit later than I'd like it to, mainly because I haven't had a whole lot of time to really sit down and produce an episode lately. I've been kind of busy, I had school starting up and, volunteering, kind of, taking up a lot of my time, and, weekends have also been kind of busy lately, so not a whole lot of time to really do some stuff. I do have some more ideas for episodes coming out. They may not be coming out, weekly. I don't really have a set schedule for when I release any episodes. However, it kind of comes, as soon as I possibly can get an episode out or whatnot. So yeah, again, I got some episodes in the works. I got a couple friend requests that I have to do. I also have, a couple other personal ones that I want to do. I got a couple MCU movies that I want to do, that I'm also starting to working on as well. For today's episode, however, we are going to dive into a personal favorite of mine. In fact, this is in my top 3 of all-time favorite movies. We will be looking at the 1995 animated classic by PIXAR Animation Studios. I am, of course, referring to Toy Story, the first ever computer animated movie produced by PIXAR Animation Studios, starring Tom Hanks and Tim Allen in their respective roles as Buzz and Woody. And don't really have a whole lot other introduction into this movie. I mean, some people that have listened to this podcast before, the first episode that I ever released was it was a commentary over the first 5 Pixar shorts. As you heard, I kind of talked about the history of PIXAR Animation Studios within that commentary. So that history will kind of continue along in this Toy Story movie because, the history of PIXAR Animation Studios and the history of computer animation itself, you can kind of see it told through these, early Pixar movies. You kind of saw it being told through the Pixar shorts that I talked about, and then you kind of get to see it told through this movie as well. So that'll be something I'll talk about as we go along with it. So without further ado, we will start Toy Story. Son of a gun. Yeah, sorry, I had a bit of a problem starting it up on the Blu-ray here. I'm watching I got the Blu-ray version. I actually have a Blu-ray set of the first 3 Toy Story movies, when there wasn't a Toy Story 4. And then, of course, you have the Pixar logo. It's actually kind of interesting. When Toy Story was first released, they had that famous kind of 3-dimensional Disney castle logo. I think a lot of people remember the old classic blue Disney logo, with the kind of the fading castle coming down. And then Pixar kind of created their own style of it with the kind of the castle kind of coming in and with the little kind of fluttery, like the arch around it. And it was debuted in the first Pixar movie. Pixar had its own kind of Disney logo, and the Pixar logo itself, that everybody knows, of the hopping Luxo Lamp, wasn't introduced at the beginning of Toy Story. If you actually wait till the end of Toy Story, the first Toy Story, you'll see that hopping lamp. So the famous Pixar logo, a lot of people didn't see it. It wasn't put in front of a Pixar movie until A Bug's Life. So a lot of that Pixar logo wasn't there, when Toy Story first came out. So we're getting an introduction to Andy playing with his toys here. We're getting an introduction to his little sister Molly, and we are introduced to our good friend Woody. the cowboy doll. A little kind of a background behind Woody, and there's also the famous Toy Story logo, which I'd say one of the more iconic logos in all of film. So a little bit of a history behind kind of the origin of Toy Story, and I kind of hit on this a little bit in the tin toy commentary section of the first episode I did. But Toy Story actually started off as was going to be a 30-minute TV special that was based off of Tin Toy. Now, if everybody remembers the story of Tin Toy, it's the little tinny tin toy, basically the one-man band, all that kind of one-man band like little toy there, basically getting tormented by a little baby, and from that they were gonna make like a 30-minute TV special in which I think it was the tin toy and like a ventriloquist dummy, got lost on some kind of a trip or something like that. Now eventually that morphed into, from a 30-minute TV special, it morphed into becoming a 90-minute feature-length film, which was kind of done at the insistence of the Walt Disney Pictures at the Disney Animation Studio. So they kind of pushed the the PIXAR people from going from a TV special to a feature-length film, because you got to remember at this time, up until when PIXAR Animation Studios started production on Toy Story, their only experience of working in computer animation had been making these 5 to 7 minute short films, and then after that they started making these little commercials for studio productions. Just a little update on the film here. The toys are starting to come to life. Don Rickles as Mr. Potato Head is amazing casting, by the way. Little RC, we get to meet Woody, voiced by Tom Hanks. Sarge, voiced by the great late R. Lee Ermey, rest in peace. And then Ham, voiced by John Ratzenberger, the famous PIXAR Good Luck Charm. But so going back to it, when PIXAR started making Toy Story, they didn't have a lot of production history or production knowledge of how to make a feature-length film. In fact, they had the only knowledge that they had was making their little short films and little short commercials. So when they started production on this, they honestly, part of them didn't really know what they were getting into, because this is going to be a lot more complicated. This film is a lot more complicated than anything PIXAR had ever worked on before. So we're meeting Etch-a-Sketch again. The Etch-a-Sketch there. I mean, they had the Etch-a-Sketch kind of draw a little bit of a bit of a pistol, which, not gonna lie, I don't think that would be able to fly in a Disney movie nowadays. But and it's kind of funny. You get to meet all the toys here. We're starting to meet all the toys now. We just met Rex, the neurotic dinosaur. We've met Mr. Potato Head. We met Ham, the piggy bank. One of the things that was really interesting about the toys that I learned in my readings of the behind the scenes history of Toy Story is that they kind of based the design and the character of the toys kind of off the design of the toys. So one of the things behind Rex was that John Lasseter, the director of Toy Story, he basically kind of stated well, you got the Tyrannosaurus. So yeah, I also got to remember Jurassic Park came out 3 years before Toy Story did, and it came out during the production. And everybody, back that, that was kind of the whole everybody's obsessed with dinosaurs. The T-Rex was obviously the biggest part of Jurassic Park, and so they wanted to put a T-Rex in there. But as you all know, the T-Rex has these little vestigial arms. They're really just in. A lot of times when you make toy dinosaurs, those vestigial arms are just little crappy pieces of plastic, and then also the dinosaurs are kind of badly painted and whatnot. So what would you imagine? So you had a dinosaur not really put that well together. He's maybe a bit neurotic and nervous. So that's why Rex is nervous like that. And then Mr. Potato Head, his parts are always coming out. He's got his eyes coming out, his mouth. His ears. His legs. Basically every part of him is basically able to blah blah blah. So he might be irritable. He might be a bit of a smart aleck, which is also why Don Rickles is probably the best choice to voice him. Same for Wallace Shawn voicing Rex. And then Ham the Piggy Bank, which we're seeing here, you kind of see him here. He kind of sits high up on a shelf, so he's a bit of an overseer of like what goes on in the room. So what John Lasseter was like, well, hey, he might be the bit of the know-it-all. And as you can see, Ham in here, he knows a lot. He looks at things. He can really, at least in his mind, he thinks, hey, I know what's going on here. So yeah, and he basically is the brains of the group, I guess. And then, as we saw Slinky, Slinky is a dog, and dogs are loyal. That was one of the things John Lasseter was saying saying about Slinky was that he was a loyal dog, and you can see Slinky during the entire movie is very loyal to Woody, the leader of the group. So again, a really interesting kind of behind the scenes like history of how the toys kind of how the characters of the toys kind of became, how they became, the group of toys that we know from the Toy Story. So this is so interesting, actually. This little scene here, we're watching the toys, looking out the window to all the presents coming in, because as Woody had just said in the staff meeting there that he had, it's Andy's birthday party today, and Andy's got all his friends coming up. One of the interesting things about all of Andy's friends coming up is you don't see any of their faces. All you see is arms and bodies and whatnot. Now, the reason that they were doing that is because at this point in the history of computer animation, humans were incredibly hard to animate. If you even look in the movie here, you barely see any of Andy, and when you look at pictures of Andy, they don't look very good. They look kind of maybe a little off, per se, And even in this scene right here, where the Army Man sequence, where they're going on the reconnaissance mission, you barely see any of those. You barely see any of the kids in like a binocular shot there. Also, interesting note about the Army Man sequence. This was the first scene animated by the PIXAR staff. But again, humans were just incredibly hard to animate, and they really. And as you can see, they kept getting better at it as the Pixar went along. Obviously they, in Toy Story 2, you saw a lot more of Andy. In Monsters Inc., you had a lot more, organic characters like, Mike, Sully, and, Boo. And then finally with The Incredibles, which is all human characters, that's when they finally got better. But at this point, again, this is 1992 to 95 when they were making this movie, they just couldn't make the human characters look that good. And also, in effect, it was the same with, the hair and kind of the cloth material of the characters. They couldn't do hair effects. It wasn't until they made Monsters Incorporated that they could really effectively animate hair in computer animation. You don't really see. You look at their hair; it doesn't really look right in this movie. Especially Molly. The only one that looks kind of good is Molly's hair, but everybody else's hair just kind of looks flat and plasticky, in my opinion. We also just saw the famous Luxo, kind of the yellow ball with the red, with the blue stripe and the red star. Just kind of go by. So now we're at the birthday present opening scene. Apparently, so they're using baby monitors to kind of communicate through each other. Apparently, they're actually using the wrong ends of the baby monitor. Apparently, the one that Woody and the toys are actually listening from is the one that you speak into. But, I think that's a bit of a nitpick if you really wanted to hear about it. It's actually kind of an interesting story point. What would current toys in a kid's bedroom think about? What would they think about, new toys coming in, or what would they think about like a birthday present opening or a Christmas Day opening, where you obviously would get new toys coming in. And as they can show here, kind of earlier in the movie, you got a lot of toys that are kind of they're scared. They're kind of scared of not being played with, and I think as we learn in the movie here, that's kind of based off of Woody's kind of fear of not being played with. Because as we see in the movie here, as we see at first, Woody is Andy's favorite toy, and he is the one that gets played with all the time. And then when Buzz comes along, obviously, as we'll see in a few minutes here, Woody doesn't get played with as much, and then that really bothers him. And I think it honestly shows also, and I just thought about this just off the top of my head, this movie kind of could be a metaphor for how leadership kind of emanates throughout your team. So, your team basically becomes what your leader is. So Woody, the leader of the toys, is very jealous. He's a good toy. He's a good, natured, toy. But at the end of the day, he's also really jealous if he doesn't get his way, and he's also really set in his ways. And so are the other toys. And it takes Buzz coming into the room to ultimately kind of change it up and make the toys kind of a lot more receptive to other new toys coming in. Of course, I'm getting way too ahead of myself here. We just saw the scene where Andy and all his friends just ran into the room and they put down Buzz's spaceship. Of course, we didn't get a good view of Buzz's spaceship. It was kind of funny when all the kids ran into the room. They were all the toys were. It was very chaotic. All you saw were the feet of the kids. It's really interesting because that just shows to me that they really had to they had a lot of limitations in telling the story. I'm pretty sure they wanted to have a big scene of kids just running around and showing all the kids, but they weren't able to do that. So they actually were really clever in how they showed the kids, and they were showing all the feet. They were showing the shadows and of all them moving around. So I thought that was a really interesting storytelling, actually. And now is the famous introduction to Buzz Lightyear. And I really like the mystery leading up to it. We see that Andy puts a toy down on Buzz on his bed. He pushes Woody off. The toys start to come out. There's something's up there, and there's Woody's well, I'm gonna go up and investigate, and then he sees this really impressive looking toys. So again, I think it's really kind of cool, actually. There's really kind of a cool little mystery added to it. And again, we also get introduced to the fact that, Buzz is not aware of that he is actually a toy. He actually thinks he's a real space ranger. There seems to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere. I love that little line there. And I love this little introduction scene here. It's such a small introduction where Woody meets Buzz, but I think a lot of people know where this series goes. They know the adventures that Buzz and Woody are going to go on. And that's one of the, at least as the movies go on, the Toy Story movies go on, that's one of the biggest driving factors and one of my biggest loves of Toy Story is the friendship that is discovered between these two, because they're I think philosophically, different toy. They're different from each other. One is, an action figure. One is, built to be cool. One is built to do a lot of these really cool things and be kind of battle hardened in such a way. And Woody, that's Buzz obviously, and then Woody is, built to be, kind of, maybe gingerly played with. He's not put together as well as Buzz is. So fundamentally they're completely different, but they form such a great bond. But obviously, as we see here, Woody starts to get a little jealous. That Buzz has all these gadgets and gizmos, and basically all he has is just a pull string on his back. So I also love this little scene here. Buzz is reading his whole his mission statement and whatnot, and we see that it's on the side of his spaceship. So it's really kind of interesting. So I think I'll actually get into the personal history of Buzz and Woody themselves, actually, because I kind of touched on the history of the individual toys, of some of the main individual toys, but I didn't really hit on Buzz and Woody very much. So going back to the idea that Toy Story is based off of the short story Tin Toy, and that it was going to be a 30-minute, Christmas special, a TV special, essentially. And again, as I said, it involved Tinny the Tin Toy getting kind of stuck on this adventure with this ventriloquist dummy. Then eventually it turned into a story of being in a child's bedroom with a child's set of toys, with one of the toys being introduced, one of the toys being the cool toy, and then kind of the old fashioned kind of toy that had been there for a while. And of course, at first, the old-fashioned toy was going to be the ventriloquist dummy, and then the newfangled toy was going to be Tinny the Tin Toy. But at least in the evolution of Buzz Lightyear, they didn't think that a tin toy was going to be. That doesn't sound like a toy's grade. That doesn't really sound like a toy that sounds really awesome. I'm going to talk over Buzz's famous falling with style scene here. He's about to jump off the bedpost and go bounce off the ball. But anyway, so a tin toy wasn't going to be viewed as the quote-unquote cool toy. So what they decided to do was, and one of the cool things is that all the PIXAR animators had a lot of toys. So they were all asked, hey, bring in your favorite toy, and we will take the best parts from all these toys, and then we will make our own cool action figure toy. So they brought in G.I. Joe's, Transformer action figures, all these different cool action figures, and that's how they ultimately kind of came up with this idea for. Originally, his name was Lunar Larry, and then they ultimately got shifted to Buzz Lightyear. Glow in the dark, karate chop action. He's got pull out wings. He's got this the helmet that does the, as Woody will say later, the whoosh thing. So ultimately that's how Buzz was introduced. Now Woody is a little bit more, maybe a bit more straightforward, I believe. But I believe that they were trying to find something other than the ventriloquist dummy. There was well, let's try and do a little something maybe more modern, or maybe a little bit more more akin to a more of a child, because let's be real here. A ventriloquist dummy, it's not as common as what a cowboy doll Woody would be, and it ultimately came up to one of the PIXAR story artists, a man by the name of Bud Luckey, who I do believe has passed away. He actually has passed on. For some of you, Bud Luckey, he actually was the voice of Rick Dicker in The Incredibles, and he also does some other he's got a low kind of bass-sounding voice, so he kind of does some low-sounding characters. But he ultimately was the one that suggested that Woody be a cowboy doll, because, in a general sense, I feel like a cowboy doll is going to be a lot more, popular than a ventriloquist dummy when it comes to, I'd say, let's say Andy is 8 years old in this movie, an 8-year-old child like Andy, so yeah, that's ultimately how Buzz and Woody came to be, So as I've been talking, we've seen the Strange Things music montage, in which basically Buzz has usurped Woody as the favorite toy in the house, and now Woody is now having to sleep basically what is in the toy box. And essentially, Andy changed all his bedding to Buzz Lightyear. He changed it from being a cowboy to being Buzz Lightyear. Also, the famous, I'm going to call him Bruce the Shark because, it's named after the name of the shark in Jaws. Bruce the Shark had hell, I'm Woody. Howdy, howdy, howdy. I also love how, petty Woody gets here because, Woody's got, he's got, this really cute... Woody. So you see, Buzz was showing, Rex and Slinky his, the name that Andy had written on the bottom of his shoe. And then Woody had, Andy written on the bottom of his shoe, but it's really cute and whatnot. And then, Woody gets kind of jealous of how, Andy wrote, his name on Buzz's shoe. By the way, Buzz's line there, the unidirectional bonding strip, that's probably my favorite line in the entire movie. But, it's a short throwaway line, but I like it, so... I love how quickly this movie goes. I just looked on my recording here. The movie honestly is probably only 20 minutes old, and we have already established that Woody's the favorite toy, and that he is the toy that has been played with the most. And then now Buzz comes in, and now Buzz is being played with most of all, and now this conflict and this tension starts to build between the both of them. Buzz and Woody. Woody not being played with as much as Buzz is, and, Buzz being oblivious to the fact that he's even a toy, which also drives Woody insane as well, so... and then Woody here is Buzz looking alien, and he's just getting a kick out of this, and, Buzz is not amused, obviously. But again, it's kind of interesting. They tell a really... The people at PIXAR, they tell a really concise story, and it's, they give us enough information, but there's not any fat on it at all. Every scene in this movie, every scene in this movie is, a certain level of is the right level of meat with very little fat. There's not a whole lot of just useless, information in this movie, so. So now we're at the introduction to Sid, the neighbor kid that blows up his toys. Currently blowing up what is called a Combat Carl. That's actually an interesting tidbit because, it's a Combat Carl is essentially just a soldier action figure, and everybody I'm pretty sure knows what a G.I. Joe is. However, I do believe I think G.I. Joe, they were pitched the idea of, having their action figure in this movie. However, I do believe that, when they found out that G.I. Joe was going to be blown up, I don't think they were going to be very enthused about it. So they didn't. So I think it was Mattel, or I don't know who produces G.I. Joe, but G.I. Joe declined to have their action figure in this movie, so they had to come up with Combat Carl. And then also another interesting tidbit about that scene is that they don't show the explosion of Combat Carl. Again, they just show kind of the bits and pieces flying off of him. And again, that goes back to the effects of computer animation and whatnot, because at the time they couldn't do the effects of explosions, and they couldn't show that. So they had to be creative in kind of how they told that, in a visual sense. So again, very interesting. I love how Woody uses the 8-ball on this to, kind of ask his fate or whatnot. So. And then Woody will get an idea here. Also interesting, there is a red Luxo lamp there, Probably taken from the Luxo lamp that was in Luxo Jr., but, I can't be for certain on that. Now, this scene is actually kind of interesting. This has the scene where Woody knocks Buzz out the window is actually has a really interesting behind the scenes history in the Pixar history. First off, a little bit of movie tidbit here. So there's a globe that is rolling here. The sound effect is actually the same sound effect that the rolling boulder in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And then the globe knocks the Luxo lamp around, and it knocks Buzz out the window. So this little scene here actually has a history, a really interesting history in Pixar Animation Studios, because the scene started off a lot differently than what it shows in the movie here. In the movie here, it shows Woody accidentally knocking Buzz out of the window. Because again, it shows that Woody is trying to knock Buzz down the behind the shelf there, to get quote unquote lost, and in the process he knocks the Luxo lamp around and knocks Buzz out the window. And then it shows Woody being kind of very remorseful in this movie, but however, it didn't always play like that. So, in the lead up to when the Pixar people were making this movie, they would actually get lots of notes from the Disney animation staff, and basically they would be saying, "Hey, you need to make this movie what they would call edgier. You need to make it more for adults." And one of the things that they were trying to do for adults would be, hey, make Woody a little bit more of an edgier character. Make him a little bit, is what they would say, edgier. I don't really know how that would make Woody edgier or whatnot. So, or make Woody meaner or whatnot. But basically, what it ended up turning into was Woody just turned into just kind of an a-hole of a character. I mean, he turned into something that you just really would not like. So, again, it's really, but because ultimately, the way that the scene played out is I believe, and there's actually a little an animatic, a little editorial animatic of how it shows the scene playing out. But basically, Buzz kind of goes up to shake Woody's hand. Is like, "Hey, Woody, may the best toy be picked, to go to Pizza Planet, where they're going." And then when they shake each other's hands, Woody essentially takes Buzz's hand and literally tosses him out the window. And then after the toys see this and they confront Woody on this, and then Woody starts becoming really mean to like all the other toys. He basically kind of stands up to like Mr. Potato Head. He calls like Slinky like Spring Wiener, and he's just really mean to them and just not really nice at all. And then according to the story, they call this Black Friday. They call it the Black Friday reel, because the Pixar animation staff actually brought that up to Disney to show it to them. And when they showed it to the Disney animation staff, it was not very good at all. And what it ended up turning into was the Disney animation staff almost shut down the production of Toy Story. And, they were ready to, yank the plug on the production and, not exactly, cancel the movie, but they were going to, like, move people around and, make it really difficult, for the production. And I'm pretty sure that if they had done that, the Toy Story that they would have produced would have been completely different from the one that we have gotten. And as I am talking over this, Buzz and Woody have been left behind at the Dynaco station. But anyway, what ended up happening is after they showed the Black Friday reel here of the scene of Buzz getting thrown out the window, and they were told it's not very good, basically what ended up happening was that they were given 2 weeks to basically rework the entire scene and to rework a lot of the movie. And essentially what ended up happening was they basically turned the movie around, basically flipped the switch on the movie and made Woody a likable character with he's a likable enough character when he starts doing the wrong thing. You're not like, oh, I'm just going to start hating that character. You're like, no, Woody, don't do that, because you know that he's not a bad character. He's just, a good character making a bad decision. So, but again, I kind of, but again, they really turned the movie around in that little, 2-week span. That was probably the most important, little span of a portion of movie production that they had on this movie, because if they hadn't turned the movie around well enough, the movie Toy Story that would have been created is going to be a lot different than the one that we actually ended up getting. And in my opinion, it would not have been as a landmark of movie that it turned out to be. So, we have the famous "You are a toy" moment, which I love this scene with Woody here. He's kind of at his wit's end with Buzz. I also love it's kind of an interesting thing. You kind of saw these Star Wars reference there, because basically you saw that Buzz was like, he's talking about Emperor Zurg. He's like, Emperor Zurg is secretly building a weapon with the destructive capacity to annihilate an entire planet, which everybody knows is basically the Death Star from Star Wars. Again, interesting, it goes back to the history of PIXAR Animation Studios. It started off as a division of Lucasfilm, which Lucasfilm's most famous movies they've ever produced are Star Wars. So, there you go. Now we are also getting introduced to the famous Pizza Planet truck. Buzz and Woody are about to go hop onto it and, get themselves a ride to Pizza Planet. I also love, Woody's, facial expressions. He's just, really, yeah, when we get there, we're going to find a way to transport you home. And he's got, all these, really cheesy smiles on him, so. And then Buzz goes up, sits up in the front, basically in the passenger seat. And, Woody says that, it's not the safest place ever, but then Woody gets, knocked around in the back seat here. You also notice that you don't see the face or the body of the Pizza Planet guy. You basically only see, the arms and the feet, so. And you also see that he's a really wild driver, so. There's actually kind of an interesting deleted bit of scene here in which Woody just gets knocked around in that back part of the Pizza Planet truck. I mean, they show him getting just knocked all upside down. I mean, all kinds of just gnarly things. But ultimately, I believe they cut it out. I think it's one of the few final animated forms of scenes that they actually cut out of the movie. I'll talk about that a little bit later, because there's another really important scene that they cut out too. So, I also love Woody's just facial expressions in this movie. He's just really great here. And then also Buzz is just unintentional comedic genius, because he just says these really funny sayings, and he doesn't mean to be funny. He just unintentionally does. What I said with the unidirectional bonding strip, he said that, really seriously. And then there was the scene just now in the back of the Pizza Planet truck. Woody basically kind of is pulling Woody basically falls into a Pizza Planet cup, and when he's kind of standing up, he kind of pushes it off his head, and Buzz sees that as an idea, and then he's like, "Great idea, Woody. I like your thinking." Which to me, it's just I find that scene just funny all the time. So again, he's just extreme. He's just one of the funniest characters in this movie, and one of the funny things that you always hear about in the evolution of the Toy Story movies is how harder it got for writers to write Buzz Lightyear, after he didn't become basically after Buzz, realized that he was a toy, the writers realized how hard it was to write for Buzz, because he kind of falls into that, what they call the Boy Scoutish, role, where he's really kind of like a goody two shoes kind of character, and and I'm hoping to do commentaries of Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3 and eventually Toy Story 4 later, but honestly, because of the reason why they had that second Buzz in Toy Story 2, that thought he was a space ranger, was because they wanted to bring back that delusional Buzz. The reason that they restarted Buzz in Toy Story 3, it brought him back to being a space ranger, is because they wanted to write for deluded Buzz again. And then you kind of saw in Toy Story 4, which was, unfortunately Buzz's weakest movie, he just wasn't as funny, and it really suffered, so. But, yeah, so that's kind of a little bit of Buzz history there. We also get introduced to the Claw here, and then the Green Army Men. Not the Green Army Men. The little green aliens, the three-eyed aliens that we also get introduced to. So. I can imagine from like a computer animation standpoint that animating all these green aliens is just incredibly difficult to do, because you got to remember, you got to animate every single. You got to remember, they're animating all of these, like all the movements of these of these little green aliens, and not only that, they have they're all on top of each other, casting shadows and blah blah blah, and they're. When they're all moving, it's just a lot of, work for the computer to do. So I can imagine how that was extremely hard for, the people at PIXAR to do when they created that, little green alien scene. So. So now Sid has picked up Buzz and Woody from the Claw Machine, which I do admit the Claw Machine game worked about as well for Sid as any other kid, because he basically got 3 prizes in 2 turns, which essentially I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have gotten 1 prize in 5 turns. But again, that's a bit of more of a nitpick in the movie. So again, you look at the human characters here; they look really I don't want to say bad, but they don't look as polished as PIXAR makes their human characters later in their films. So, and it's kind of funny looking at it in a high def film portion here. The film definitely looks kind of jaggedy, and how it's computer animation looks. There's some scenes that you can definitely tell that the film has aged, and that it's a computer animated film from 1995. So, not that it's bad or it takes away from anything in the movie. It's just, of course, nobody would have thought of 1080p or even 4K high definition, back in 1995. But again, there's sometimes you can see the age of this movie, in certain portions. So. But again, it's it doesn't take away from the movie. It's just kind of interesting. So, of course, that happens with a lot of older movies. As they kind of get transitioned into high definition HD, you can kind of see the flaws and kind of the ins and outs kind of up close and personal with it. So. But it just makes the movie kind of, I think, all the cooler. So this scene I could imagine like a lot of parents like were what when they saw this, because now we're getting introduced to Sid's kids. No, not to Sid's kids, but to Sid's toys. We've just been introduced to the spider baby. There's the like fishing, like the fishing pole yo-yo thing with legs. There's the hand in the Jack in the Box. There's the little baby toy with the head on it with a little arm. You see all these just different toys, especially with the way that the baby spider just kind of comes out of the bed. I can imagine some kids are just like, "What the heck from that?" Because again, I mean, you got to remember, like, parents bringing their kids to these movies. I mean, this was a Disney animated movie that it was marketed as, and I'm pretty sure when they saw it, it's like, man, this is nothing like what I thought it was going to be. But I found it really interesting. So now we're just now realizing that now Andy and his mom and family are coming home, and Andy is now realizing that Woody is lost. So now Buzz is lost and Woody is lost. And then apparently the only two that are really upset about that are Bo Peep and Slinky. Although the irony is they even show in this little cutaway scene here, which actually is this fade to daylight scene. He's literally just right across the street here. It's kind of interesting. Some of the Pixar guys were talking in their in the behind the scenes footage, in the behind the scenes commentaries that I listened to. A lot of the Pixar animators, like some of the classic Pixar animators, like Andrew Stanton, Joe Rampt. Actually, no, these are story guys. Andrew Stanton, Joe Rampt, Pete Docter, I believe. They actually described themselves being more like, Sid Phillips in this movie. They were like the kids that were gonna like blow up their toys. They showed Sid like taking the magnifying glass and shining it in Woody's face and whatnot. But they were like doing all these like weird and grotesque things with their toys. And it's kind of funny, John Lasseter, who the director of this movie and was one of the main leaders of Pixar Animation Studios for a while. People would describe him more as an Andy, because one of the fun. If you have ever seen a documentary or an interview with John Lasseter in his office at Pixar, before he had a bit of an unceremonious exit from Pixar, but we're not going to get into that. But John Lasseter's office at Pixar, at the Pixar Animation Studios, was filled with toys, and John Lasseter himself even said he loves collecting toys, and he had like an old Casper, the friendly ghost doll that he said he based Woody off of the pull string, and so again, I mean, the movie here a lot that it frames Sid as the bad guy, even though obviously, as you can tell, I mean, from a toys perspective, I mean, obviously he is the bad guy, but if we look at it from maybe our perspective, Sid is basically just kind of like any old kid. So now we get the Scud the Dog. So as we can see, Scud the Dog, again, not only was it tough animating, human characters, but you could see that they kind of struggled in animating Scud the Dog, because, again, he's a bit of a weird-looking dog. Because you look at him, there's not a whole lot of... the fur doesn't look really good on him. He's got, like, these really weird, not like, big, like, fake-looking eyes, so it's... So, again, they had a trouble animating just kind of any organic characters back in those days. So now we're getting to the scene where Buzz is... he's kind of come across the so he's coming across the commercial of himself where he's essentially just a where he's finding out that he is a toy. And the funny part about this scene is that the voiceover of the commercial is actually Penn Jillette from the magic duo Penn and Teller. And again, John Lasseter, who directed this movie, he essentially was saying, well, Penn Jillette is a big booming voice that he wanted to find for this movie. And obviously, apparently, according to the behind the scenes story, I mean, basically they literally shut they had a room in the studio that they were recording the lines for, and then they shut the door, and I think Penn literally just screamed his lines into the microphone, and he essentially was just like, the world's greatest superstar, the world's greatest toy, which I can imagine Penn kind of yelling pretty loudly, because he's a pretty booming voice, if you've ever seen Penn and Teller. So now we are in the famous Buzz trying to fly after this scene here. I will go flying no more. Sung by Randy Newman, who again, Randy Newman does a great job with the music in this movie. And again, a little bit of a tidbit here. There's the scene when Buzz jumps out, and it kind of shows him like flying towards the window there, and there's a shot of Buzz. It shows Buzz's backside with the window kind of in the background, and essentially, if you look closely on Buzz's bottom, literally his butt, you can see a copyright Disney thing, a copyright Disney logo on his buttocks. So, slipping in the Easter eggs a little bit early on in Pixar, they were, so it's kind of funny. Going back to Randy Newman, his songs, I'll go over his songs a little bit here. Actually, one thing before I do that, because we're about to see this flooring for the last time, but if any, so the carpet in Sid's house, if anybody is ever a movie buff and is ever actually is familiar with this, but the carpet pattern is actually the same as the Overlook Hotel in The Shining, from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. If anybody ever remembers that famous tennis ball scene in which Danny's in the middle of the hallway playing with his toys, and the tennis ball goes literally right down the line of the carpet pattern. That's essentially the same carpet pattern that is in Sid's house. It's not exact, but it's definitely an homage to it. So, as what they would say. So, okay, so I was talking about Randy Newman's songs and his contribution to this movie. So, Randy Newman, he composes the score for this movie. So basically, all the background music. He writes all the lyrical songs. He performs those. He writes, You've Got a Friend in Me, Strange Things. Clearly I'll go sailing no more. I'll go flying no more, or sailing no more. And then I've Got a Friend in Me at the end of the movie. Kind of the history behind that is, so there was actually people from Disney. Again, during this entire production, there were people from Disney that were very much involved in the making of this movie. Again, PIXAR Animation Studios was the main producers of the story and of the movie itself. However, Disney was also very involved in the movie as well. And according to the story, one of the days that happened was one of the days during production, there was a music producer that essentially came into the I think was pitched the entire movie, and essentially what the music producer asked was, so after they were pitched the entire movie, the music producer was asked, so where are you going to put your 4 musical numbers? And at the beginning of, and the people from Pixar that were making this movie were very specific. They did not want this movie to be a musical. They did not want it to be a fairy tale. They wanted to do something different than what Disney was doing. They didn't want it to be like, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, the Aladdin, all those movies that Disney had been, the Disney movies that were being produced at this time, which are, again, I mean, this movie was produced during the golden age, during the Disney Renaissance, which, has a lot of those, famous, The Little Mermaid, fairy tale, type, box office hits and whatnot. And then when they told the Disney exec or the Disney producer that they weren't going to involve these musical numbers, the music exec got a little kind of nervous, and he was like, you can't do that, and blah, 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 blah. And, by the way, before I move on, we are watching Woody trying to fake Buzz's arm, in front of the toys across the window. The toys across in Andy's house have finally discovered that Woody is across in Sid's house, and then Buzz's arm got yanked off, and now Woody was like, "Give me a hand," and Buzz just threw his hand up, and Woody's trying to fake it, and now Woody just showed the hand out, so now the toys don't, believe Woody at all, which is unfortunate. So going back to the musical story, I believe it was a one of the, a Disney exec that was, in charge of, music. I don't know the full, I know the broad strokes of the story. I don't know, the details and who the people were in the story, but one of the music execs from Disney came to the Pixar production team, and they actually explained to him the importance of music and how it could actually help in telling the story. How it actually helps, it's not just music for the sake of music. It's music because it actually helps advance the story. So the people from Pixar they came up with the ideas of doing these montages of the characters in the characters in the movie aren't going to sing the song, but the song itself is going to be about what's going on in the movie. So as you can see in the movie here, obviously, You've Got a Friend in Me in the beginning of the movie is all about Buzz and Andy's friendship, but then at the end of the movie, it also means that Buzz, and it also signifies Buzz and no. In the beginning, it's Woody and Andy's friendship. I think I may have said Buzz and Andy's. My bad. So it's Woody and Andy's kind of relationship, and in the end of the movie, it's Buzz and Woody's friendship. So it's also kind of an interesting, double meaning with Randy Newman there. And then obviously, strange things are happening. Woody is losing his grip on the room per se, and then I Will Go Sailing No More, talking about Buzz's, fall from, his so-called grace. So, nice. So, again, it's kind of an interesting story with the music behind this movie, because originally people at Disney wanted it to be a musical, but the people at Pixar were steadfast against that. So, again, thankfully, it never turned into a musical. So now Sid has bought the big one rocket, and he's trying to find a toy to strap it to. And as we see, Sid, like any other, like any good, kid, he has a toolbox in his house. He also has I saw one of those little clamp thingies that you can kind of rotate. You can kind of screw it, and it kind of clamps shut together. So. And then thankfully we see that there are storm clouds coming in so that they couldn't, launch Buzz and, blow him up. So Sunny. I also love that, he's got Sid's got a little bit of he's got an arm attached to his alarm clock. Again, it's kind of his little morbid sense of humor per se. So. No, in this scene here, in which it's Andy had just been put to bed, and Rex and Potato Head immediately burst out of their box. I'm pretty sure Andy would have caught them, because I don't think a kid can go to bed, literally go straight to sleep right after that. So a little interesting tidbit that I hadn't been able to mention, but so Bo Peep, who, obviously throughout this movie, I hadn't talked to her much, about her much, but Bo Peep, who is, Woody's love interest, originally wasn't the initial love interest for Woody. And in fact, the original love interest for Woody was going to be a Barbie doll. However, I don't know the company that creates Barbie. It might be either Hasbro or Mattel, I believe. But they wouldn't license Barbie out to the movie because they didn't really think the movie was going to be that much of a success. And then ultimately, when the movie became a success, Barbie became very much involved in the Toy Story, franchise. But just know that originally Woody's love interest was going to be a Barbie doll instead of a Bo Peep, lamp doll. So I really love this scene. I really love this scene between Buzz and Woody, because I think this scene, as I said earlier, the scene in which they met marked the beginning of, at first a tumultuous relationship that over the series of the Toy Story films would grow into this amazing friendship, which ultimately, what I believe is the driving force behind why the Toy Story series is so remarkable. I think the Buzz and Woody without the Buzz and Woody friendship and their chemistry together, I don't think Toy Story is what it is. And this scene right here really is, I think, the genesis of that friendship. Because as I said before, they're two completely different, they're fundamentally different characters. I mean, Woody's a very simple character, not as flashy as Buzz, and but Buzz is, as a toy at least, Buzz is a lot more cool. He's got a lot more like bells and whistles attached to him. And then Woody here, and he's finally realizing that, what's my worth compared to Buzz? But then Buzz realizes that, but then that's ultimately when Buzz realizes, their worth as toys, the worth of a toy. The thing that Woody understood, but that Buzz wouldn't get, but then now Woody understands it, but then he sees the downside of him, which that he's not that cool of a toy compared to Buzz. And I think that's ultimately this scene is about, accepting who you are and accepting your role in life, you're accepting the fact that, you might have a role in something, and that, sometimes you need to fulfill that role. The role part might not be as important, but I think it definitely, I might scratch that part out of it, but I do believe that it's important. I believe that this scene shows the importance of accepting who you are, because Woody accepts the fact that he's not that cool of a toy, and then Buzz accepts the fact that, he is a toy, so pretty interesting. So now the race is on to break Woody out of the crate and escape over to Andy's house, in which Buzz pushes the entire toolbox and crate over onto Woody, which almost wakes Sid up. Again, I just love how a kid like Sid has a toolbox in his bedroom. So now Sid is awake, and he is going to take Buzz outside and blow him up. I just notice it now. I find something new with this movie every time I watch it, and I've seen this movie so many times. I mean, my friends who will listen to this, they know that I can almost quote this entire movie just verbatim, honestly. And one of the things that I just notice is Sid's enthusiasm he grabbed Buzz and he just ran out of the room. He's like, woo-hoo, to infinity and beyond. I just love that scene from Sid. It just shows that at the end of the day, he is just a kid, so he's not just this monster, He is a kid, but at the end of the day, he is a kid. Maybe a monster in the eyes of toys, but to us, he's just a kid, so. Now this scene here, I really like this little scene with Woody and Sid's toys. Earlier I'd kind of talked over it, but Buzz and Woody had discovered that Sid's toys were actually, not, evil or not like, as bad as they seem. And then in this scene there, like Woody's trying to, get them to help him out because, he wants to save Buzz, who's outside about to get launched into oblivion. And he needs help with that. He also needs help getting past, Scud the Dog there. And I think it's one of the most powerful scenes in the movie. Actually, it's Woody's. He basically says I always think about it a lot. Woody basically says, please, he's my only friend. He's the only one I've got. I think it just shows the importance of, of this movie, the importance of, friendship and, the ability of working together to, attain a common goal, I think. Which, which is a common theme that I see during a lot of Pixar movies. It's the theme of, friendship and working together and, and even in some cases, family. So, and not only that, it's like unlikely friendships, because, Buzz and Woody are, some of the most unlikely of friendships. So, and again, at this point, I really, the toys, they're trying to hide from, humans seeing them and whatnot. And I part of me wants to think that after seeing a lot of this, that, humans would get really suspicious. There's, the ducky that's just kind of sitting out there, swinging around. I feel like somebody out in the neighborhood would see that. And then, we reel him up there, and obviously Scud sees it, but Scud the dog sees it, and then right here in this scene, in which Woody and all the other toys, they come running down the stairs, and then they run out of the house. I feel like, somebody would have seen that, or somebody would have heard it, so, but, I digress. Of course, as the movies go along, the toys get they get less and less discreet about their hiding spots. So, but again, that's just me in this movie. So, so now Woody is playing dead. He is going to do his famous bit at the end of this movie. I feel like that's a common question of like people and toys in this movie, like in this world, like, hey, how did you get out here? Hey, where did you come from? Or hey, like where have you been? Why aren't you in this place that I left you? Because again, I think the toys are just banking on that that the humans aren't going to remember where they're coming from. So. Just a quick side bit before this scene here, like when Sid lights the match, the effect of the fire is actually really cool. Like I don't know up until this point, like the people at PIXAR had been able to perfect fire at this point in computer animation, but I will admit when they showed it in that little scene there, it looked really cool. So, it looked really realistic. So I feel like that's pretty awesome. So. And then some other computer animation tidbits. There's they're showing toy soldiers hopping out of, like, computer generated water. There was computer generated sand that a truck was coming out of, which essentially, which all those scenes look, very good. And I mean, for the time at least, the water looks really cool. It looks like a really cool effect with all the toys going out of it, and the trucks. There's a truck that kind of emerges from the sand, and it looks a little computery for my taste, but for 95, that was a great movie effect. So now Woody has just done his "we toys have seen everything," and then Sid threw him up in the air, and then Sid is now scarred from Toys for Life, as you can see. As you can see, his little sister. Gosh, what's his little sister's name? Hannah. His little sister's name is Hannah. That's embarrassing. I have a little sister named Hannah. Which his sister Hannah shows him a doll, and Sid's screaming and whatnot. So, which I can imagine that could really screw Sid up for life, honestly. So now we are transitioning from the escape plan of the toys to Buzz and Woody are now having to catch up with the moving van and the moving company. And Woody has to get Buzz out of the fence, and now they miss Andy's car, I mean, but they see the moving van. But unfortunately, as we will see, Scud the dog will unfortunately look at that, and he will see, oh, look at that, I know those toys, so. And it's really funny. You can see the difference in the toy. You can see the difference between the toys here. I mean, you can see that Buzz and how they run to catch up with the truck here. Buzz is running like an Olympic sprinter, and Woody's just flailing his arms around, running like a ragdoll, how a ragdoll would run. So, and I love this little ending scene. This little scene. This chase scene with Buzz and Woody, because it shows that they're really committed to helping each other out now. Because as you see earlier, Woody helped Buzz. Woody helped Buzz, get out of the rocket. He helped Buzz go through the fence. And now Buzz returned the favor by, hopping on, Scud the dog and essentially, getting him off of Woody. And now Woody is now trying to help, Buzz and help, return the favor. So now Woody is back on the moving van, and he's opening all the boxes. And he is finding our good friend RC, the remote control car, and it looks really bad because he just kicked RC off the moving van, and all the toys are thinking, "Oh, Woody's just kicking more toys off again." But then RC sees that, oh, hey, it's Buzz, so. And then Buzz gets the idea, is like, hey, I'm gonna hop on me, and then he'll go out here, so and hop on RC, and then Woody will steer him out there. Unfortunately, the toys don't really know what's going on. Of course, it's funny. You can see in the scene there, the toys that are going towards Woody, you can see RC in the background, but they don't see Buzz on it, which is, a bit nitpicky, but still. And then the toys are just kind of beating the crud out of Woody here. They spun him around, pig pile on Woody. I mean, it's just all kinds of stuff to him. So, which they show him spinning around. They show the RC kind of going around and around, and then they show that Ham hopped on him, pig pile, and then that showed the RC kind of hopping up in the air, which I don't think would happen in real life. But again, that's I'm being nitpicky from that perspective. So. And then they toss Woody out, and now he is by himself now. And then again, a car passes over them. Wouldn't a person see that after a while, and wouldn't they be like, hey, why is that toy, standing up? Or why is this, RC with these moving toys on it? Of course, I don't think anybody would, believe them if they, like say, hey, I saw a moving toy. So, but again, that's just, me being nitpicky. So, now they finally see RC. Oh my gosh! I mean I know that I'm kind of beating that in the bush, but I mean that's something I've always noticed about this movie. Is like they see RC when they chase after Woody in the van. How do you not see Buzz? I mean, come on. So now they are lowering the ramp to try and help Woody and Buzz get on. Now, the one thing that I really like about this is the effects of the skid marks on the ramp there. You can see the ramp is, in contact with the concrete, which I would imagine that the drivers of the van would be like, why is the ramp down? But again, I digress. But you can see the effects there. The ramp is like making these skid marks, and you can see like the sparks flying up, and I just thought that was really cool. Effects that they were showing there. However, unfortunately, Slinky Dog can't hold on to them much longer, and Woody and Buzz get stranded back far away. So, another interesting tidbit is that while this little chase in here shows Buzz and Woody going through multiple houses and going down mile, like maybe like not miles and miles of road, but going through roads and all that kind of stuff. I think they only built like a few houses and like only a certain length of road that they just reused over and over and over again. But they didn't build like all this. I mean, again, in the computer you only build like what you absolutely need. I mean, if you only need to build like a short period amount of road, then you're only going to build that short amount of road. You're not going to, build, an entire length of road. You're just going to reuse it over and over again. Uh-oh, now Woody has lit the rockets. Rockets explode. Now, this scene with the rocket is probably is an absolute marvel of computer animation, because not only are you looking at the effects of the rocket, of the fire escaping the rocket, but you look at the effect of the rocket escaping. You look at Woody's face and how like it's contorting, how like you can see the wind, and it's like blah, 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 blah. And then right here, this scene of the smoke behind it, and then you can see down below like how pretty the ground looks. I mean, it's just a marvel of computer animation. It's a really short section of scene there, and then obviously the explosion, which was really hard to do back in those days. But again, it's just a marvel of computer animation what they were able to pull off in that scene, and ultimately this entire movie. And then finally this scene in which Buzz is he gets an upwind and he starts flying, which he says is falling with style, and then they're have this little great scene here with the great music. So and I also love how Buzz is like, I'm not aiming for the truck, and then Andy sees Buzz and Woody in the box, which of course I'm pretty sure any other kid would have been like, I am almost certain that I looked over about a minute ago and I did not see you guys there. So what the heck is going on? So now we're going to Christmas. Again, I was talking about, birthdays and Christmas, birthday parties and Christmases, during, this movie. So we're now at the Christmas part of the movie, and now they are doing the same thing that they did at the beginning of the movie. They're talking about they're watching over the kids. They're watching over which presents the kids are, going to get now. So, again, really interesting, end of the movie. So, another tidbit that I just saw here, we just saw the, Bo Peep kissing Woody at the end of the movie. Where you see the books on the bookshelf. You can see this earlier in the movie with Woody in the staff meeting, but the books on the bookshelf are actually the names of the PIXAR shorts. and you can see like Tin Toy, Andre and Wally B, and Knick Knack, all these short films and whatnot. So that's a bit of another Easter egg that they would put in their film there. So I love how the dynamic in the room has changed at the end here, that they're not really nervous about new toys coming in, that they're pretty accepting to everything, except a new puppy. And that's the end. So Toy Story, that's, again, a landmark film in the history of computer animation. Now, it's a really, as I've said before, I mean, it's not a really difficult film. It's not a really complex film. It's very simple in its story, very simple in its characters. I mean, as you can even see in the set design, it's nothing really that out of the ordinary, except, maybe a street and some houses and a kid's bedroom. So anyway, as I was saying, the movie itself is it's not really complex. I mean, however, for anybody that knows the behind-the-scenes history of it, this movie was extremely difficult to make. I mean, the PIXAR people had never dealt with anything this long before. They had never dealt with the complexity of characters, the complexity of, shots they had to make. And even little things that we take for granted in movies, like, camera movements and, set designs and, textures and shading and shadows and, background layouts. I mean, it's all of it is, cutting edge at the time for this movie, and it just marks and it's really awesome, someone that's really interested in the history of computer animation, just seeing the evolution, from those short films, to Toy Story. And then myself, why do I like Toy Story very much? I mean, again, I think it's funny, Buzz and Woody are, among my favorite, movie characters of all time. And it's a really quotable movie. It's really funny, and, I don't think they set out to make a comedy. I mean, I think they set out to just make a good buddy movie with, some funny moments sprinkled in, but, I mean, this is a straight-up comedy. I mean, I laugh every single time I watch this movie. And it has some of my favorite, all-time movie quotes, in it. So, I mean, that's, unidirectional bonding strip, great idea, Woody, I like your thinking. I mean, it's all really great, quotes in this movie, so. And, I mean, ultimately, this movie was, the catalyst for PIXAR the jumpstart for PIXAR to, ultimately create their, amazing catalog. And, we wouldn't have movies like, The Incredibles or, Toy Story 3 or, Up without Toy Story, so. And again, this movie really laid the groundwork for it because, without the first computer animation movie, you wouldn't have any of the others. So, again, that's why, I mean, Toy Story is, at least I think in the history of animation, Toy Story is, I'd say at least, one of the most important animated movies of all time. I mean, you probably could put Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs up there. Possibly put, movies like, maybe the Beauty and the Beast and something like that. But, I mean, Toy Story is definitely up. I mean, you look at every single movie that has been released nowadays, and almost 99% of them are computer animated movies. And to be quite honest with you, almost every single form of animation is computer now. I mean, some that even look hand-drawn, like, the 2D animation, I mean, they do that in the computer now. And even like, TV show like South Park, that is done in the computer. There's like digital ink and paint systems like in the computer that, create these 2D looking, that you can create 2D looking, animation and, make it look like it's, 2D animated. So, again, I mean, Toy Story paved the way for that. So, I think for at least the modern era of filmmaking, Toy Story is probably the most important of modern day animation, from 1995 on in the past 25 years, because, I mean, this year marks the 25th anniversary of Toy Story. Toy Story probably is the most important animated movie in the last 50 years, so. And then not only that, I mean, it also not only is it an important film, it also just doubles as, a great film on its own. So, and again, I don't think it would be as highly regarded as, I don't think the computer animation, industry would have taken off as much if Toy Story, wasn't as successful as it was. So, yeah, that's my take on Toy Story. Again, sorry, there was a little bit more probably audio issues with this podcast. This was the first podcast I recorded using my Zoom H6, which for some of you people listening that are podcast hopefuls, the Zoom H6 is it's a recording tool that actually allows you to record multiple microphones. And I'm still kind of figuring out like the kinks and all the tools to use with it. So and I'm also using these new microphones that I've bought. So this one might have a little bit more audio difficulties than some of the other ones. Hopefully not. And I do apologize for that. But and I also do again apologize for the long wait between episodes. It's just been really difficult. I mean, again, I'm recording this at this is, I think, midnight 30 that I'm doing this right now, and I have to be up in 8 hours. So, not a lot of sleep for me tonight. So, again, thank you all for listening. That was Toy Story. Again, a landmark in computer animation and in animation itself and in filmmaking. A great comedy all around and a definite must-watch. And again, with every single movie that I do, if you listen to any of my podcast episodes and you see the movie title, I recommend watch the movie before you listen to the episode. I don't think it does very good to attempt to listen along with the movie because I don't think it lines up very well. And again, as you can tell, I kind of go off on like my own little like storytelling as I go along with the movie, but again, it definitely does good to watch them. It definitely does good to watch the movie ahead of time and get a sense of what's going on when I'm talking about it. So, thank you all for listening, and stay good out there. And again, I will see you on the flip side.